I've been kind of grinding One Piece. It's a nice just like show to half watch. Also, Bennett, we gotta figure out how to have your keyboard farther away from your mic or something. As I'm editing this, I spend like a half of my editing time just trying to get rid of the clicky clacking.
I think my keyboard is just really loud.
Yeah,
like you hear it. You hear it like here.
Yeah, it's just like higher pitch clicking. Well, there you go.
That's as far away as I can get while still sitting at my computer.
Alright, well, everyone's just gonna have to suffer through a little more clicking. Usually I can get rid of, like, the... half is an exaggeration. Usually I can get rid of the worst culprits pretty quickly. And then if I'm trying to get picky, it takes more time.
Is my mic better as this? Or as this?
Oh,
It's
that's
a little sexy sounding, the second one.
Okay. I'll switch between them partially through the...
We'll work with it. I woke up. I had an awful sleep last night. Interestingly enough, got my booster, my COVID booster, yesterday.
Vax status?
Yeah, I'm like quintuple vaxxed and boosted. I've got as much fucking Fauci flowing through my veins as is humanly possible right now. Or as much as legally possible, I'll say.
One of the funniest posts I saw recently about Kissinger, and look out for our Kissinger bonus episode dropping in the future, was someone being like, was he vaxxed?
Oh. That's good shit. No, usually I'm good with vaccines. I actually got my tetanus shot recently, which is supposed to be a really bad one. And it was just fine, but this one has, like, rendered my left shoulder half immobile. It's so painful. Sleeping last night was pretty rough. I woke up. Everyone around me is getting sick. Like, on the team, they're getting sick and all of that. It is what it is. Oh, I just doxed myself a bit. Whatever. So we were out, hanging out. And I just drank the same drink as someone who was just cripplingly sick. Just could hardly talk sick. And I woke up last night at like 4 a.m. My throat was dry, my stomach was like hurting, and I was like, oh no, tomorrow's gonna be awful. Woke up, I think either I was just tripping or I'm already over it.
Why did you drink the drink?
I was thirsty.
Oh, fair enough.
Oh my god, dog.
It was alcoholic, and their body was doing so poorly that they weren't gonna finish it. And I figure you can't waste good alcohol.
Listen, alcohol is sterilizing. Alcohol is sterilizing. This is why I'm never afraid to take communion at church, and why I think they should have kept it during COVID. It's because alcohol is sterilizing, so is silver, and they make the goblet out of silver at church. So, if you get sick taking communion, maybe you should take a hard look at your own lifestyle and think, did I deserve it? Am I being punished?
Yeah, is this kind of like karma coming at you? Have you been sinful recently?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it.
When are we going?
Usually I recover pretty fast.
But during COVID, there was the only big church-related outbreak in Kingston was that evangelical church.
Yeah.
The schizo one. And let me just say, maybe that's some punishment for spreading some false doctrine. That's all I got to say about that.
So how far are we from a theocracy which mandates silver cups for health reasons?
I don't think that is economically feasible.
I think 2020 was as close as we were ever going to get to a silver cup mandate. But I don't think it was that pressing, unfortunately. If that couldn't do it, I don't know what else could. I think what we should do is go to just actually making the communion itself out of silver. And I think that would also help clear out any vampires in the church.
And it would turn all the Christians blue, so it'd be easy to tell who's Christian at range.
So Indian
easy
sweets,
targets for the war.
Here, one of the most famous Indian sweets is usually coated with silver.
Yeah. Does it turn people who eat it blue?
No, it just tastes great. It's one of my favorite sweets. It's so good, and that's you can get with real silver as a coating.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I know if you consume too much silver, you do turn blue. That's like a famous thing.
That would be so cool. I could literally be fucking Papa Smurfing on these hoes. Damn. Maybe I'll edit some laughter into that one like I do the other times.
Sorry, I was muted because I was typing and I didn't want to, broadcast my typing noises. But this is like the Paul Carrison famous case of a guy who ate silver every day, and he just turned into like a Smurf.
Yeah, that's dope. I could be him.
We should videotape you every day getting a little slightly more and more blue.
Yeah,
for like a year or two.
Day 1000 of eating silver communion every day.
Okay, speaking of Christianity, punishment for false doctrine, etc., there is once again a war on Christmas. That's right.
Didn't this happen last year?
Every year we're in the trenches in the war on Christmas. Some of us are anti-Christmas, some of us are pro-Christmas, but it always goes down.
Is there anyone that's actually anti-Christmas?
Well, we're going to get into that. Because you may have heard in the news recently that Quebec, the Quebec National Assembly, and the federal government itself, the House of Commons, have both released statements defending Christmas as not racist. And these were both passed, I believe the House of Commons resolution was passed unanimously, even by the non-Christian MPs, and the Quebec one was passed by all parties, although I don't know if the MPs themselves voted unanimously, or whatever they're called in Quebec.
MNAs.
MNAs. And so why did this happen? Why are we wasting time voting on whether or not Christmas is racist in Parliament? Well, the Human Rights Commission of Canada released a statement about religious discrimination. And in the statement, they said the fact that Christian holidays are statutory holidays, but other religions do not have guaranteed statutory holidays, is evidence of, or an example of, religious discrimination, which prompted a controversy in Quebec, which led to Quebec passing this motion, and then the Bloc Québécois brought it to Parliament because they were so mad about this. And Parliament decided to just go along with it. The main issue is the Human Rights Commission never actually said it is bad to have Christmas as a statutory holiday. They have never claimed that Christmas is racist. They just claim that it kind of sucks that other religions don't get days off too. So the Human Rights Commission had to release a counter statement saying that they never said what they are being accused of saying by the government.
So yeah, no one's really saying that Christmas is racist. We've just invented a one-sided argument. Like, we invented another side for this argument. And yeah, my favorite thing, like you were saying, is that they're like not saying that it shouldn't be a holiday or something, but what would almost certainly happen if this was a real argument is that we would just lose holidays.
That is true. That's why I'm iffy on the statement itself, because I'm like, I get the point, and ideally, all the religious holidays, you could take them off if you're that religion. Yeah. But like the only reasonable outcome of this statement is Christmas getting questioned whether or not it should even be a holiday. The other thing is, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it does not matter at all. Because the only party that would start removing statutory holidays is the Conservative Party. And they would never remove a Christian holiday. That would be so contrary to their brand and alienate their base. Yeah. Christmas is not in danger of not being a holiday.
Yeah.
I hate saying this, but in defense of the Conservatives, they've done a really good job of adding holidays. I just want to throw it out there. Have you ever looked at the history of Family Day?
No.
So Family Day was started in the I think it was 70s in Alberta by the Conservatives. 1 month or a couple of months before they announced Family Day, the son of the premier of Alberta at the time was caught selling massive amounts of cocaine and trafficking a large amount of cocaine through Alberta. And when asked about it, the premier said, "Man, sometimes families need to be more together in order to provide a better role model for what's happening."
Hero.
And a few months later, he announced Family Day.
This is how we should handle everything, really. One of my main points was, like, do we just kind of gun for this postmodernist thing where just everyone, based on whatever little category you fit into, gets their own custom holiday schedule? Or why can't we just have more holidays? We have all this technological innovation, and we have like 3 holidays.
Yeah.
Or where they all go. We can't even get Sunday anymore.
Yeah, how about this, all right? We have, like, European tier guaranteed vacation days, and then you can just use those on whatever holidays your religion observes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where'd the sick days go? I thought that was their job.
No, sick days are objectively not for that.
Not in theory, but like in application, they can't really question you, right?
But the only reason why that is in application is because we have such an abysmally low number of guaranteed vacation days.
Okay.
Like, ideally, you would take sick days off when you're sick, and you could do that as many times as you want, and then you could take off vacation days when you're, on vacation.
How about this? When you're born, as a baby, they put a little D20 in your hand, and eventually you're going to drop it and therefore roll the D20. And based on your roll, they sort you into different categories, like kind of Hunger Games style, that decide what your holidays are throughout the year. And that way, you get like different groups of people that get their own kind of uniting factor around their holiday schedule. Where like there will be 20 different groups of people that'll all share holidays. It's like a community event.
If only there was an existing community structure around people who observe the same holidays.
No.
As an aside, if I had a nickel for every time Spencer brought up a weird baby-related experiment, I'd have 2 nickels, but kind of odd that I already have them.
Yeah.
This was hardly experimenting on the babies. This was
this is more of a sociological experiment on society at large.
The babies just happen to be the root of it.
Yeah, they just happen to be the start of the program. Okay. Anyways, that's the latest news from the front in the war on Christmas. And I'm gonna say, Christmas bros, I think we're in for our 2023rd consecutive W.
I think so too. Is it Blanchet, Shrey?
Blanchet, yeah.
Blanchet says, is Christmas racist? He asked. Trudeau replied, Christmas is not racist.
Let's go.
So, Trudeau, fellas, I don't know if this is a dub or not for Trudeau, because depending, you either want him to say that everything is racist, in which case it's not a dub, but you're kind of weird, or Trudeau's looking normal again. I hate baiting questions so much. This question was just a waste of time.
Yeah.
We should have like collect all the different times different MPs tried to bait each other and it just failed spectacularly. This is such a good example.
Another core of this that really is... This whole situation is just bewildering. From the releasing of the statement by the Human Rights Commission without realizing the optics of the statement, all the way to the fact that the province that is making us all have this conversation is Quebec, which is supposed to be the radically secularist province that isn't supposed to care about religious symbolism and is supposed to actively oppose it, right? I feel like this should have come from, like, Alberta or Ontario or something, not Laïcité Central Quebec.
Well, Quebec is like... I'm going to be canceled by the Quebec government if I keep talking, but...
Look, it worked out for JJ twice. Sorry, 1 second, I'm going to censor his name so I don't get started again. I already had to bleep out like 8 things in the last episode. I spent, I think, like 2 hours, almost 3 hours just going through the JJ passages of our last episode.
But it's not surprising given that Quebec, did the laïcité thing, and then were caught having the cross inside the legislature, which they then removed. But if you look at the flag every once in a while, you'll notice that it's quite heavy in symbolism.
Yeah.
And then there's a massive cross just over Mount Royal in Montreal that's just there.
Yeah, I feel like Quebec's kind of like, hey, we're secular unless. But what if?
I feel like Quebec adopted its aggressive secularism regime to break the power of the Catholic Church in the province as fast as possible. And now that the Catholic Church is, like, powerless in Quebec, I think they just kind of still want to hang on to the old Christian symbolism. Because there's no real conflict there anymore.
I think
I
one
can't say
thing
too
that's
much.
heavily underrated about religion is just kind of like the vibes of it. You know, when it's like
Yeah.
religion is on its own, it is kind of cool. You know, like you get
Yeah.
these big crosses, and which crosses fundamentally funny because crosses right now are like a symbol. They're a very positive symbol. It's a torture device.
Yeah,
You know?
it represents the sacrifice of Jesus Christ for the human race.
I feel
But
like
anyways,
in different times, filling churches with the crosses and stuff like that, it's kind of weird, isn't it? Like, if you actually experienced crosses and like if that was still around in your lifetime, that would be a little weird, wouldn't it?
Well, crosses didn't become a dominant symbol of Christianity for a long time. The
was a
original,
fish, right?
the original symbol was the fish, and then like the Greek letters alpha and omega were also huge and still are, and the chi rho, which is like a Greek letter R, Greek letter X,
Uzma
were also big. And anyways, speaking of Quebec, there is another controversy in Quebec, a different religion, the wokist religion. Okay.
Uh-oh.
All right. The French are once again chafing under the tyranny of wokisme. Okay. Quebec Solidaire, which is Quebec's sort of equivalent of the NDP, but not really. It's a sort of democratic socialist party that uses NDP color, like the orange and all that stuff, and fills the niche, but is unaffiliated with the federal NDP and is organized in a very different way than the normal political parties in this country.
Yeah.
For example, they don't have a leader. They have two spokespeople who just like issue statements on behalf of the party, and the party is kind of controlled by its members in a much more radical way than most other parties are. Mm-hmm. At a recent convention, QS passed a motion saying that if there are any by-elections in the next year, and there are none planned right now, but if there are any, just by chance, Quebec Solidaire will only nominate a member of an underprivileged group. So no men, I think they said.
Yeah, men are banned from running in the by-elections, the potential by-elections. And he gave up what's the Oliver Bolduc gave up his membership in protest, and he looks very soy as well. Like if you're looking for a feminine man, if the picture was right, this is about as good as you can get.
Yeah, well, he is a member of Quebec Solidaire. He's like he's like a big figure in the party. So like he is at least committed to their general ideals. Mm-hmm. But he did resign in protest over this motion. And Quebec Solidaire released a counter statement saying, well, if you're so upset by it, you should have actually come to the convention and spoken on it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very kayfabe heavy situation because Quebec Solidaire's original statement is very performative. There are no upcoming elections. The next election in Quebec is in 2026. There are no scheduled by-elections. So saying for the next year we'll only nominate women, they will nominate the same number of men as women. Let's just say. It's going to be 0. And then his counter statement is also like, well, this thing that doesn't matter, I'm going to resign and protest over. And this is, I think, like, sort of a perfect distillation of the ongoing affirmative action debate in the United States, where affirmative action is a more pressing political issue than in Canada for a variety of reasons. It's like two groups of... affirmative action exists to gatekeep elite positions. It exists to gatekeep elite reproduction. So it's like two people fighting over one of like a couple hundred jobs at the top of the economy. It's an annoying non-issue, is my point, that exists only to make the left look stupid in situations like this.
Yeah, affirmative action is something that, is a big part of the civil rights movement and all of that. My favorite moment that I get all the time is when people say MLK would have hated affirmative action. And it's just like, MLK was standing affirmative action forever. Now, I guess, times and all of that changing and yada, yada, yada. But affirmative action is something that, like, should be good. And it just ends up being, like, it's just opaque enough and just subjective enough to drive everyone insane.
Yeah.
It feels like it's mathematically formulated just to make people upset about fucking everything. Right. I don't know how they nailed that so well.
And, like, the crux of the affirmative action debate in the United States is, like, fighting over the handful of spots of people who go to Ivy Leagues, like Harvard and Yale. Yeah. That's, like, the big controversy with affirmative action right now in the U.S. and why the Supreme Court was viewing a case on it recently. Mm-hmm. And it's, like, it's all of this hullabaloo over a very small number of highly privileged positions. And this, like, case in Quebec is, like, the most distilled version of that, where it's like a slap fight over literally 0 positions, no jobs.
Yeah, nothing's happening at all. One thing I find weird about affirmative action is, like you said, it's this real fight for, like, the people who are at the top of the chain already. And I know the theory is that, if people are part of this kind of underprivileged group or in an underprivileged area or something like that, where they don't get these opportunities, versus, the Yale fellas who are like a generational promise, who get all of those meetings and opportunities and stuff like that. The people without the opportunities will be just as hardworking, if not harder, just as smart, if not smarter, but they'll struggle to make it to the schools. But it still means that affirmative action in those cases it only really applies to the people who are in the best spots possible. It applies to the smartest person at your school, who is still the smartest person at your school, if you're in a shitty school or whatever. Well,
there's, like, 2 arguments, I guess, for affirmative action. The stronger one, I think, by far, is the idea that if the elite... Because affirmative action, again, exists to gatekeep elite reproduction. Yeah. So if the elite is more diverse, they're less likely to ignore the interests of the the black working class specifically, right? If it's all white people, I mean, they're not going to give a shit about the working class anyways, but they're much less likely to care about the black working class than if there was white people and black people, etc., interspersed throughout these elite strata.
Yeah.
I think that's like a fair enough argument. Like, there's not really any proof that is true, right? But it at least passes the sniff test. The other argument is, like, the mobility argument, that it's like, this is how we lift up the black community from generational poverty, because they started as slaves, and then when they were freed, the government gave them nothing. They were just expected to start from 0, so they've always been on the back foot. But that's, like, again, this is for, like, a handful of positions. This does not meaningfully impact that community at large. It is not going to lead to, like, racial income equality in a meaningful way.
Yeah. This will be like the few people that make it out of the hood. This isn't going to raise the hood.
Well, theoretically, they'll be able to help out. It's like a start of a process, right?
Yeah, but the thing is that it's like... the thing is, if that were true, like, there wouldn't be any poor white people, right? Because, like, there are plenty of rich people. Like, most rich people didn't really start from nothing. But there are enough white rich people who started from effectively nothing that if it were true that they would go back into the community and lift everyone up, there wouldn't be poor white people, right? It doesn't make any sense. It's not a viable way to end inequality at the racial level.
So I do think that affirmative action in terms of institutions is important, though. Like, institutional leadership. Like, I think that the fact that a cabinet is 50-50 is, like, a good thing overall. Because, I mean, I have a hard time believing that I could make good decisions on women and men could do the same thing just in general. Like, I think it's better if the institutions we have represent who they're supposed to serve.
Yeah,
which is different from universities
too. I mean, I've been reading Mark Carney and stuff like that, and he talks about how when they design currency, if you have currency that only has, like pictures of white fellas on it or something like that, even though it's still just money and money is for everyone, it still kind of shows the representation of that money is something. And what I also find with cabinet positions is you probably have more than enough people who are skilled or talented enough to hold that position. And if you have like 1,000 people gunning in for 100 jobs, just random numbers or whatever, then you may as well have some form of diversity in the process. Because if you're aiming to like have a government that represents, Muslim people and stuff like that, and there are no Muslims in the government, what does that say to them about how well they can be represented and how their experience is done? I'm not like the biggest postmodernist, but I feel like this is kind of one of the cases where people, like everyone's own little experience and stuff like that, and them seeing themselves in the government is very valuable.
And we laugh at the Saudis, right, constantly for having all men on their women panels and whatnot. Yeah. it makes sense why we would laugh at them.
Yeah.
Right?
My favorite thing from a book that I always talk about on here, Winners Take All, was when Anand Giridhara was going to a big kind of feminist change-making panel, and there were no women in the audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he just kind of looked at it and was just like, so what are we, like, the speakers aren't women, the audience is not women, like, what are we really doing for the women here? How are we supposed to, like, really get any feedback?
Right. This representational argument is like all fine and good. Whether or not it is true or not, I have no idea. Right?
Yeah.
It probably is. That's, I guess, my intuition that it's probably true. The other thing that, like,
the vibes are there.
Yeah, the Quebec Solidaire move will not increase the number of women in Parliament because there are 0 open positions.
Yeah,
like,
he said that. He was just like, if you want our party's values to be diversity, like, we can't represent our values if we have no one in power.
Yeah.
You're not getting anywhere.
Exactly. Like, Quebec Solidaire is still in 3rd place in Quebec, right? Like, they haven't overtaken the PQ and the CAQ are still clearing them by a wide margin. If your goal is to get as many votes as possible, I don't think having a big public falling out with one of your members over whether or not men should be allowed to run on behalf of the party is good optics. Yeah. I don't think that's going to engender them any support that they do not already have.
And also, if you're a guy that is in their party, like him, it just means that, like, you're not ever going to make it bigger in their party. You have a notable ceiling for you. Why would you spend more time there? It's just going to make your own party weaker.
Well, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I mean, there's a ton, like, most people in parties don't run, right?
Yeah.
Like, parties are filled with thousands of people. Only, like, 0.5% of them run.
Yeah.
But
so I don't think there's that.
But a political party is fundamentally an alliance of interest groups, right? If you believe your intersection of interest groups is no longer represented by the party, there's a disincentive to continue volunteering for it, even if you morally agree with the position, right? Why would you... if Quebec Solidaire has the optics of being anti-male or whatever nonsense, right? What incentive is there for guys like this guy, Bolduc, or whatever his name is, to continue dedicating their time and energy to advancing this political project?
Well, because most of the MLAs, if I remember correctly, are male still.
Yeah,
right?
but
it's like a very temporary thing.
Presumably this guy, doesn't like what this implies, right? I don't think the Quebec Solidaire government would be anti-male in any meaningful way. I don't think any policy position they hold that is anti-male. And even if all Quebec Solidaire MLAs were women, I don't think it would be that important. Again, these are like a handful of positions. But you have to appeal to, like, if you're a party that's supposed to be the working class party, you need to appeal to the broad spectrum working class. And that means not positioning yourself as opposed to a specific segment of it. Or at the very least...
affirmative
not positioning
action.
yourself as appearing as opposed to a specific segment of it.
I feel like affirmative action is just a cognitive hazard for white boys.
Yeah, I would agree. The thing is, like,
I agree with you overall. It's just a much ado about nothing, to be honest.
Exactly.
He's also like, I mean, he ran 3 times and didn't do anything, right? So I don't know how much of an influence he has on the party.
Yeah, maybe they were just trying to get him out of the
really
party.
None, because he didn't even show up to the meeting. You know, I think the best response Quebec Solidaire had was like, you weren't even there. Like, you didn't. If you didn't like this, you should have showed up and opposed it.
I think I mentioned this before, like, or in our chat at least. Like, I'm generally, I have mixed opinions on affirmative action, but I do believe in affirmative action against this one guy in particular. And it's like, he's not really helping the party at all, nor does he really seem to care a lot.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I do agree with you overall that leftist parties, especially like New Democrats, Quebec Solidaire, and so forth, they do have an optics problem right now, and they're forgetting that the goal is to increase the tent by bringing people together and try to avoid these small, minute divisions internally. And it's easier to elevate people into power who you believe should get power, even if representation matters, when you're in power in the first place.
I mean, it's
right?
like Mark Fisher said, you know, if you're a leftist party, your focus and always the core of your focus needs to be the class war. So if your focus is turning into, like, identity politics, his advice was just start saying you're a liberal because you are one. Like, you need to... Yeah, it's hard to be, like, a leftist, like a communist or something like that, and really engage in identity politics in any productive way beyond just what class you are in.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think I agree with you, where the unfortunate reality is no matter how intersectional and how open the class warfare point is, and how it's about bringing people who are exploited out of exploitation, the fact of the matter is once you start focusing on identity of any kind, which is not class-based, you just open yourself up to attack from others. You can point at you and be like, oh, c'est le wokisme, or whatever.
Yeah.
The liberal left
look.
and stuff like that will end up, like, finding some gripe. It's a little rough. Now, what would happen? Let's say the white boys aren't allowed to run. What if this guy started going to church and started eating a ton of silver communions and turned himself into a blue boy? Would he be able to run then?
No, because he's still male. I believe the...
Fuck. Oh, right, it was just
statement.
male.
The statement banned men generally.
Okay.
Like, black men are also banned from...
You know what? I'm with them on this one.
I agree with Shrey that this is so inconsequential, he should have just said nothing. Like, who even gives a shit, man?
I think, as a callback to our earlier episode, with all the Toronto mayors, we had Feng Gao, who said pussy equals power, and wanted women to walk all over him and stuff like that. I think he's found his party. I think Feng Gao would love it over here, where he could be dominated by women, politically.
Well, here's the conspiratorial take. The PQ is very close to the QS. The only main difference between them is the PQ is quote-unquote anti-wokisme.
Yeah.
To the point where they're, like, very open about the N-word and whatnot.
Hell
right?
yeah.
What?
Another cognitive hazard for white boys.
Is the PQ, like, economically left-wing? Because Quebec Solidaire, despite having bad optics, is by far the most... is, like, the best party running in Quebec.
QS is the most left wing economically, but PQ is not. PQ switches between leaders. I believe the current leader is more left wing.
Okay.
All right, but I assume Quebec Solidaire averages to be much further left than the PQ.
Yes. But if your goal is to be in power at all, this is a fantastic way for him to jump parties to the PQ. Like, he's not really with the QS anyways.
I don't know if entryism would work in the Parti Québécois beyond one leadership cycle. It's just
they're looking for MLAs, right? People to run in the elections.
Yeah.
So he would be a perfect candidate for the next one. Someone who fought the wokes and is generally left wing.
I always forget about that when someone, when something like this happens to someone, they always have the easy transition into anti-woke. It's like it's the cleanest pipeline that exists right now.
Yeah, maybe this guy's just getting that bag. I guess we'll watch the news for this guy, see if he pops up again.
Well, yeah, I guess if he wants to be in another party too, he'd have to actually show up, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he would have to show up to the meetings.
He's getting a lot of
apparently
political press. He's getting a lot of political press in Quebec. Like all the major stations are interviewing him now like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. Well, I assume most of the media in Quebec is hostile to QS's democratic socialist vision, right?
I don't know enough about to go further than that.
Well, the drama will get blown up.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, speaking of vision and interviews and videos, yeah. Speaking of all that visual media, my member of parliament, you guys may have heard of, Pierre Poilievre, has dipped his toes into the realm of video essays and has posted a video essay explaining the housing crisis.
Yeah, so before we jump in, I just want to say, from I watched it, and without, paying too much attention, I was just kind of watching it go by. This shit rocked. Like, it was fucking fantastic. I was cruising through it, and I was sitting here as, the fella I am with my own, all my ideology that I got from the ideology store, and I was looking through it, and I'm like, yeah, this shit is, actually pretty good. Now, we kind of went back after, and I think mostly Ben and Shrey did a lot more analysis of this, but, what I figured would happen with Poilievre was that he would be the number one going into anything because the Liberals are shitting the bed. But when it actually, push came to shove, I figured he would be challenged. But if he keeps up with videos like this, there is no challenge. He just wins. This was on par with, whatever video essays any fucking millennial / Zoomer is watching. Yeah, all the Vox shit. And yeah, for a quick watch, even for progressives, he had, the fucking, parking... mandatory parking zoning laws in there. That's a fucking easy buzzword that he shoveled in. And yeah, there's no competition. He just wins. If he keeps this up, it's everyone else is dead in the water.
I will say, I have been saying, actually, that conservatives are very good at identifying what is wrong with the current material conditions. They're actually very good at that. But then once they are in power, their economic policy makes things worse. It's basically identical to the Liberal Party's economic policy, but even crueler overall, and even less, even more neoliberal, even more privatization focused. So Poilievre has identified many problems that are real with housing prices, but his solutions, which he barely touches in the video, are the most baby brain dog shit of all time.
Okay, so let's talk about the video itself, the video, not the content, but what it is. Then let's go into the content itself and why there all the mistakes or whatnot.
It has graphs with 2 axes, vaguely labeled.
We'll go to Mark Fisher because I want to hear the theory behind all of this too.
Yeah. The other thing is that it's the conservatives are much better at acknowledging material reality than liberals. We're living in this fantasy land that everything is good, that everyone is happy, and the economy is great, right? If only we could convince people that the economy is doing well. Yeah. But that's obviously bullshit. Obviously untrue. And the fact that, the NDP isn't releasing video essays like this is an incredible indictment of that party.
Well,
that party should
talk about
cleaning up.
Video essays is such a weird thing in politics. I can't even think of... I mean, I would say Canadian, but even going past this country, looking at other countries, the UK, the US, other countries, seeing a politician release a video essay, right? I think we're all used to 15-second ads or sound bites that someone just shouts or screams, and then a cute little music in the back, and that's it.
But this is true. I think this is a great move by Poilievre, because this kind of is I think this is kind of the future of politics is online engagement, and I think the NDP identified this themselves when they tried to make Jagmeet Singh blow up on TikTok and failed, but they did try. I think the liberals are kind of stuck in the past with the idea that TV and radio is the last frontier for political advertising. But now, to be fair, it's easy to make that mistake, I think, because who watches TV and radio? Old people. Who votes? Old people. You know?
Well, Shrey, as well, you've read most of, at least, Shopping for Votes, and a big part of that was how the information that is given out has decreased substantially for party platforms. And no one reads anymore. We talked about that over the last episode. No one's putting all this effort in to learn about the actual things of their political platforms. But this, even, like, sure, it's a little misleading, but welcome to politics, buddy. When has it not been, you know? Like, this isn't even welcome to the new age. This is just, we've been here. Oh, am I lagging out? Maybe.
No, you're fine.
And
You're fine, yeah.
It's like this video conveyed a ton of information, at least surface level, about his ideas and beliefs and what's going on. And it conveyed it in an entertaining way that many more people will consume. I think that he is like, I think this is what we're going to be seeing more of for anyone who actually wants to be taken seriously, is they're going to need to have video essays that convey what they believe and what they're seeing and what is wrong.
And I feel like I agree. And I think that is how they'll start mobilizing young voters, is reaching out on platforms that young voters are actually on, right? Mm-hmm. Young voters aren't listening to CBC radio or, well, I guess not CBC radio, but the radio in general.
Yeah.
They're not watching cable news. They are online, scrolling through short-form content or looking at YouTube video essays.
Yeah.
You know, this is a perfect place to reach out to them.
So two things. So I listened to this other podcast, which was going and doing a deep dive on this new video and going through it like second by second. And there's two things that they said, which I really, really liked, where previously, there was two different variables which prevented political parties from doing this. The first big one was that no political party wants to look extremely partisan with a lot of their information, right? They want to be like, oh, this newspaper endorsed it, this TV station confirmed it. It's like the news will be taking care of the actual spreading of the information. And so it's rare for political parties to make advertising which is information dense and more of just nice platitudes about the platform itself.
Mm-hmm.
And the second big one, which they talked about, was in politics, or not just in politics, but normal life, if you're explaining, you're losing, right? That's a huge important thing. If you ever have to explain something in detail, you're probably lost the conversation already.
Yeah.
This one does something great where, first of all, the Conservative Party didn't rely on a news media to spread the information. They just made their own videos, right? And they just made it so easy to share because everyone's like, look how smart I am. This is where I got all this information. This explains it in detail. And people like thinking that they're smart. And secondly, with this video overall, since the Conservative Party has full control over what they can show, they can hide away all the partisan stuff by making it look like it's scientific and mathematical, which is excellent.
Yeah.
Like, I think the future is going to be like this, especially, Bennett, what you said. But even going past that, since this is not explaining the thesis everyone knows, housing is going up. So they're not ever explaining that. They're just explaining why it's going up. Mm-hmm. And that's something which I think politicians have always missed before.
Well, it's Trudeau.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, Ben, you were saying how this is a good way to reach young voters. And this is something I've said for a long time. Everyone complains about young people not voting. And everyone frames it as this issue with the young people and how they're so not politically inclined. But almost all the young people I know are pretty damn politically inclined. And a lot of them still don't vote because they feel like, one, no party actually really believes in what they believe in, and two, no party actually tries to message towards them. And I think this was a big thing that happened in, like, thinking back to the whole birth of the blow-up of Chapo Trap House and all of that, was they had the whole, like, Bernie campaign, and the Bernie campaign reached to a ton of young people. And if I'm going back to the Persuaders by Anand Giridharadas, like, the Bernie campaign and AOC were people that were able to reach a lot of young people through their social media and like their way of speaking, their way of attacking things, to the point where the entirety of the Democratic Party, if they wanted to run, had to copy the Bernie/AOC model until, you know, they kind of blocked them out of that election cycle. And I feel like what we're seeing now, I'm not going to say it's the same thing, but we're getting someone who's actually going towards young people, is going to, like, making a real attempt at engaging young people, not only in a form that they like, but in with an issue that matters to them. And I have a feeling that's going to mobilize a lot of young people to vote.
But the NDP have tried this forever, right? They've always been like free university or help with housing and everything. But they've never been able to capture people's imagination. Is it because a lot of their platforms and speeches sound like it's a duty versus a desperation that Poilievre gives out?
Maybe, like, I'm not sure whether maybe the housing crisis right now has kind of hit that breaking point that it is completely unavoidable. Like, university is important to, one, people who are going to university, and two, people that struggle to afford university. So, despite the fact that it is kind of a point that a lot of people do like, it is only very passionate to a select group of people. But housing is, like, a lot of people are very passionate about this right now because they have to be.
And university, I guess, for like people like me is only 6, 7, 8. Well, for me, maybe longer years. But for most people, it's only a couple. Well,
yeah, university is only 2 decades of your life.
Well, housing is forever, so that makes sense.
Also, what is the rate of attending university for young people? I know in Canada, there are a lot fewer people at university degrees than you might expect if you yourself have one, because you're surrounded by people who do. What's like the Gen Z/millennial rate of graduating university?
Well, something like 50% of Canadians have a university degree or something like that. It's like some really high number. Mm-hmm. Oh, let me.
I guess I don't really know that much about the NDP's actual attempts because I'm not on social media that much. But like this one, again, it feels like a somewhat mature discussion of things. It does have its little educational aspects of it. It doesn't feel like it's really trying to reach young people. It feels like it's trying to reach everyone, just in a form factor that young people like. But anyways, you and Bennett were shitting on this video for like 6 hours yesterday. I kind of want to get into some of that because I didn't do that much of a deep dive into all the graphs. I guess we can kind of go through it slowly. The one I really like was the Canadian net federal debt, where they put Trudeau elected after the time that it starts to increase.
Yeah, that's the core of our criticism, right? Besides the fact that we just disagree with his solution to this problem, that he is correctly identifying, the video is full of just completely dishonest data representation. Like graphs with squished y-axes, graphs with like double y-axes where one axis is like so many more units than the other, or like the representing like exponential growth of debt since Confederation, but not adjusting for inflation. There's a lot of stuff in here that's like
if you don't adjust for inflation, everything is just generally going to look like an exponential curve no matter what you do because inflation is exponential. Yeah,
every year you're multiplying every number by 1.02. That's all like
that's I guess a recent number. Usually it'd be like 1.05 to 1.07 and then it went down to 1.02 and like it's up again. But it's like the number just increases like that. It's not an honest representation. Even if
it's hard to summarize. It's hard to summarize what's wrong with the data representation here because it's a lot of visual trickery rather than like easy to explain trickery. But when it comes down to it, it is still fundamentally accurate, more accurate than the Liberal Party's assessment of the situation, which is that nothing is wrong, right? That you just have tricked yourself into believing that things are bad and that the government is doing everything right.
Yeah, you just have
This
to
is
keep on trusting the plan, and then it'll work out.
Yeah, even though the Pierre Poilievre video has a lot of dishonest stuff in it, it is still closer to reality than the Liberal Party's public messaging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I can give you just a high level, quick ones which are wrong. Like Bennett said, the axes were completely off, or failure to adjust for inflation. So everything is just blamed on Trudeau when, $1 of debt in 1867 is very different than $1 of debt now. Mm-hmm. The other big ones I saw was he every single number was more or less centered on 2015, which is when Trudeau was elected, of course. But things were getting way worse before 2015. But for some reason, maybe because a Conservative was in power before Trudeau, all of that's been eliminated from his graphs. So it looks like Trudeau's the only reason things are bad.
Yeah, the x-axis is always truncated to just make Trudeau look bad. Yep. Like, the x-axis is always the exact right length to blame Trudeau for problems. If the Harper government was doing the same thing, the cutoff for the x-axis is Trudeau's election. Yeah. If the Harper government wasn't doing the same thing, the cutoff for the x-axis is fucking Confederation Day.
Oh my god, yeah. I was looking at, the Canadian net federal debt. There are 4 numbers on the x-axis. 1867, 1917, 1967, and 2017. Like, when there are lines going up or down or sideways or whatever, I don't know what year we're talking about. It's like, I see this increase coming up, and then I see like a downward trend. When was that? What happened then? What policy was that? I have no clue.
Then there was many times he talked about how housing prices has gone up significantly because of government debt or government interest rates or whatever the government's doing. Mm-hmm. And then he compares with other countries, how other countries are cheaper, but fails to acknowledge inflation in the UK just fell to 8%. And all these other countries are having it way worse than us when it comes to inflation or debt or everything. That just saying it's a Canadian-only problem is really disingenuous.
Yeah. Like, we're getting hit hard with the houses, but there's, like, with inflation and all of that, frankly, like, it's not good, but compared to a lot of places, it's pretty mild. Like, I'll say it's bad. A lot of places are doing atrocious right now.
There was a weird drive-by where he talked about how cities are increasing taxes and making it more difficult to afford your mortgage. And then for some reason shows a picture of Olivia Chow, even though Olivia Chow was just elected a few months ago and hasn't even passed her first budget yet, so she didn't do anything.
Yeah, and this strays to Olivia Chow is pretty funny, because also she's pretty well liked so far, at least.
Yeah, she's well liked in Toronto.
Yeah.
She's well liked in Toronto, but also, like, I don't think this will... Like, she's well liked in, like, downtown Toronto, right? Yeah. A lot of the suburbs went by loud during the election, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like, and that, like, where the Conservatives are competitive in the GTA is where Chow is viewed more ambivalently.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And people people generally don't like Toronto across Canada. It's a very well-known thing that Toronto's, like, the cesspool of hatred and the worst place in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of my favorite images from this was how Poilievre is talking about how decisions in housing makes things way more expensive, that we need to get rid of all these rules and regulations. And he cites minimum parking requirements add as much as $165,000 to the cost of a new housing unit, even as demand for parking spaces is falling. He has that highlighted, but still in the image, just not highlighted, is we applaud the recent vote by Toronto City Council to scrap most minimum parking requirements. We believe other cities should follow suit. Like, he was showing that Olivia Chow was doing the right thing, doing what he wanted to happen, but framing it as like a drive-by stray towards Olivia Chow and also saying that it wasn't happening, which is... Actually,
I think that was John Tory who did that.
That was John Tory? Oh, okay.
Yeah. But he also has John Tory in the video as like a bad mayor.
Mm-hmm. He all stacks John Tory, so it doesn't matter. Like, he just hates Toronto.
He also identifies problems that he implies are correlated, but doesn't really explain why they're correlated, or does a very bad job of it. Like the federal debt being linked to housing prices. Mm-hmm. Which is, like, I think sleight of hand for his real policy goal, which is to gut government spending, further dismantle the state, as is the end goal of all neoliberal projects. There's a lot of dishonesty in this video. There's a lot of like issues with it.
My favorite is he talks about how housing in 2022 was less than 1972, which is a fair point. Like, fair enough. That is awful that we have way less housing being built now than 50 years ago. But he doesn't ever explain what was happening in 1972 and why there were so many houses. And if you've looked into it, a lot of those houses were being built by the government of Canada.
The government of Canada used to build a ton of housing. The government used to be heavily involved in the housing market. It used to have its hands right in there. As we'll cover in our fall economic statement review, my section of it, both parties, the NDP, or not the NDP, the Liberals and the Conservatives, both of those parties, really, really don't want to admit that when housing was being built at its highest rate in this country is when the government was building half of it.
Yep.
Yeah, when you reduce government investment, you just reduce total investment. That is all that happens. There's just less money going into it. And also, the government is, in the market, an excellent competitor because it does not need to get a bunch of profit. So if you think that capitalists in the market are more efficient, but they don't have a competitor that doesn't need as much profit, they have no reason to be more efficient. They can just become less efficient, and it is just better for them. It gives them more profit, which is your efficiency right there. Well,
I actually want to do a small shout out to Pierre, because one thing I really found awesome in this video is he did a shout out to the Musqueam Nation in around Vancouver in British Columbia. And his entire so the Musqueam Nation is building, I think it was 600 or 6,000 homes, something like that. 6,000 homes in a small community just outside of Vancouver, because the Musqueam Nation owns that land. It was unceded territory, which was given back to them, I think it was last year. Which I thought was really fascinating was by talking about how they were able to build houses so fast because they're a reserve and not have to go through government. He implicitly endorses the reserves having a lot more power and giving a lot more land to indigenous nations, which I thought was fascinating. And so I wonder what that means for future of indigenous relations with the government if Pierre's going to give back everything.
Yeah, that was because Trudeau, one of Trudeau's big things was kind of indigenous stuff. And Pierre kind of stealing that out from underneath him was a real smooth move, I gotta say. Just saying, not even just like, hey, we can work with them, but we should be learning from them and we should be copying like their moves because they're doing it better. Like that's dope. That's dope.
Yeah,
I do want to go into the solutions.
One other thing, I actually have a good segue into solutions here, Shrey. Okay. One problem that he correctly identifies is financialization, the existence of housing as an investment vehicle rather than a place to live. But then his solutions involve no remedy to that.
Yeah. So his solutions are: 1, require big cities to complete 15% more home building per year as a condition of getting money. 2, giving bonuses to cities that exceed the limit. 3, require federally funded transit stations to have like more housing development around them. And 4, selling off 15% of federal buildings and thousands of acres of surplus federal land that's suitable for housing. 15%, big number here.
I am interested if that's basically implying, like, cities have two options, right? Either they just bring in a lot of other corporations to build the housing, or they build the houses themselves. Now, the cheaper option, obviously, is to just get corporations to build the building. I wish there was some kind of maybe group of cities that could work together and pool their resources together to build housing, but I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, it's outside of the environment. That idea's kind of been pushed to the wayside. Hopefully it makes a comeback at some point. This would be a great time for it to make a comeback, but I'm not sure if Poilievre is going to be the one to do it.
The Liberals have replied to this video, by the way. And so this was the reply they tweeted out against the video by Deputy Prime Minister and Financial Minister Chrystia Freeland. For those who can't see it, she replied to the original video with a tweet with a link to the budget.
Yeah, boring. Me. No one's gonna read that shit. I want to watch the fun video.
Oh, no one's gonna read that shit? We read that shit.
Oh, fuck. No. Damn, I forgot about that, honestly. I literally have notes on it in front of me, and I forgot that I read that shit. That's how boring it is. So yeah, if you're looking at this tweet, don't read it. It's not exciting. At least my section I thought was pretty vague, and it's not worth it. Just watch the fun video with Trudeau's face all over it. It's kind of cute. It's oddly inspiring.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Listen, folks, I hate to say it. You know how much I hate to say it.
Mm-hmm.
But folks, it's Trudeau. It's Trudeauver. All right, it's Trudeauver.
It is truly Dover.
The Prime Minister next election. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on.
Well, he had a good run. I'm not gonna say really it's Trudeauver like that. He had a good run. It's like it's about time, you know. I'm not gonna say like, damn it. He never even got started. Like,
yeah. The thing is that like, even if he had a good run, everything must come to a true end.
Yeah.
We'll smoke a joint for him. We'll smoke a joint.
All right. Let's
move on.
I want to skip that one real quick in favor of a 0.5 episode where we go over it. So we're going to hit you guys the 0.5 episode for the budget because I'm really excited to talk about a new development in the world of trucking. There are some videos now that the Cybertruck is it's actually happening at long last. Elon, not known, everyone says he's known for actually delivering, truly not. I don't know why people think that. This guy's delivered like one product in the last 15 years, and it was government funded. So, there you go. But there are some trucks that are hitting the roads now. We have the Cybertruck, ladies and gentlemen. Now, have you guys seen anything about the Cybertruck? I think, Shrey, you watched a bit.
I watched half the video.
I've seen the safety concerns people have with it.
All right.
That's what you're going to cover.
Yeah, that's literally my first point, was this truck seems like it is designed specifically to kill children. Putting this thing on the streets, especially near an elementary school, is like putting like a fucking harvester combine out on the road in like a game of Octopus. It is all sharp angles. They all look about neck/head level, perfect for cracking skulls or decapitations. And on top of that, I was watching the MKBHD video, and he said that you can't see the nose of the truck really when you're sitting inside of it. So what you have to rely on is a front-facing camera on the center console to see in front of the truck to see if you're getting close to things. Which just... Bros, what is going on? Any self-respecting city would not let this inside their city. A lot of things like the doors and shit like that have no manual options. If something breaks, if something fucks up, you're gonna have to be replacing sensors. And on top of it being all sensors, like maybe it's the iPhone or something and it's all built nicely, the build quality is shit.
Was it like panel gaps or something like that in there?
Yeah, like everything just bends.
Teslas always have panel gaps. Teslas have some of the worst build quality of any automobile on the road. They also have like the worst, like... Listen, I could talk about Tesla's self-driving program all day, but I don't think the Cybertruck is included in it. In terms of safety features... The Cybertruck is missing one key innovation from almost 100 years ago in car design, and that is not building it out of stainless steel, and secondarily, including crumple zones, right? When you see crash test videos online of old cars, you'll often see boomers in the comments being like, yep, thing barely bends. They don't build them like they used to compared to the new car, which like smushes like an accordion. What people don't realize is that smushing like an accordion effect is not a cost-cutting measure. It is just objectively safer than a car that does not crumple.
Yeah, either the car destroys itself or it destroys you.
Yeah.
And especially when the inside of your entire car is full of a bunch of sharp corners hard edges and right angles, prime for cracking skulls on, I figure at least it should give me a bit of crumple room.
Yeah, the point of crumple zone stray is that when a car crashes, it like the energy goes through the car crushes, the energy is expended, right? So it doesn't crush you. But if the car will not crumple like that, if it's involved in a collision, it transfers energy to the occupants, who are then like destroyed by it. Yeah.
One feature that I found so fucking funny was you can't ship a vehicle without mirrors. So they have easily removable mirrors. And they want you to rely on just sensors and cameras for when you like are trying to merge lanes or whatever. And as someone who spent that works in IT, you do not want to rely purely on this shit. Like, you want mirrors because it's just better. Like if you're looking at a mirror, you're looking to the side that the vehicle is going. One, that is good for your brain, is looking the way that you move. So now, instead of looking like that, you have to look, I believe, to the center console, which is the opposite way. You're just looking practically down at the floor. You're looking at a screen, so you lose, like, peripheral vision and all of that, just to look at a camera. That is a disaster. Holy shit. If there's ice, you're never getting in your truck.
So I have a story about that where my professor has a Tesla, right? And she last winter there was an ice coating, an ice storm, and it froze her car, and she couldn't get into the car. Like, she had to uncover her handle and punch at it for a couple of minutes trying to uncover it and get the ice off so that she can use the app to punch a hole from the handle out.
Yeah. Yeah, this one doesn't even have handles. What they did is they just said the motor will be strong enough to push it out. I don't know if this guy's ever lived somewhere cold before. Ice is stronger than your vehicle.
Yeah, well, Elon is Canadian. Elon is Canadian, so, you know.
I refuse.
Well, he lived here for a couple of years. I wouldn't say he's Canadian, you know. Listen, he's from an apartheid country, and it's not Israel, all right?
There's no hazard button.
There's no hazards button?
There's no hazards button. There is a sensor thing that you can tap with your finger to turn the hazards on, and it's actually right with the gears above your head. Which is insane. Like, you're in, you're in a crash, you need to turn the hazards on, something like that. You're a little dazed, you're a little confused. The last place I'm thinking is a little tap screen above my head. I want to fucking smack a button.
But also, wait, when you said the gears, the gear shift is above your head?
Yeah.
Huh?
It's above the center console thing. It's like where you would regularly have your mirror. Do they have a mirror? I forget. I think they had a mirror. You just can't see with it.
Is it a tap, or how do you switch gears?
I think it's a tap.
Huh.
Which, being everything's automatic now, I kind of get it. Not for me. Maybe I'm just gonna be an old head on this one, similar to how you need to shift your gears or whatever. But I do not like the whole mindset of getting rid of everything mechanical that you interact with. I think that's really bad. The windshield is the largest glass panel windshield that's out there, which just means it's going to be the most expensive proprietary replacement part that exists out there as well, alongside everything else in this vehicle. Nothing else has gears above your head. Being a mechanic and getting a Cybertruck, I would just shoot myself.
Well, you probably can't even repair it anywhere without right to repair, except at a Tesla dealership.
Yeah.
And the other thing with the screen tapped gears stuff, beyond the psychological aspect of shifting gears, there is the issue you are adding yet another point of failure to the drivetrain by doing that. in a conventional car, you mechanically shift gears or you mechanically change from drive to reverse to neutral to park, etc.
Yeah.
That's like one part, basically, right? There are like internal parts in it, but it's like a point of contact with the drivetrain. In this, you have to press a button. Then the computer sends a signal to basically the same part. And then it shifts driving mode, which is just like makes it more prone to failure.
Yeah, just about every single thing in this vehicle just has one more point of failure than is necessary, and minimizing points of failure on complex machinery is kind of important.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's
the idea of also having going between park, drive, and reverse by button is scary. Because I mean, I could accidentally hit the parking.
Because when you're another thing, most cars with automatic transmission, if you were to shift from drive to reverse while driving, you will destroy the transmission.
Yeah.
But most cars won't let you do that physically because there's like locks in the stick where it will only move if you have the brakes applied. Right? So you could, in theory, break the transmission by braking and then switching to reverse while the car's still going forward. But, like, you'd have to really try to do that.
Yeah, you'd have to put some effort in.
But, like, with this push button thing, I hope it doesn't let you switch to reverse while you don't have your foot on the brake, you know? The fact that it's like a screen does not give me much hope for that, though.
Knowing engineers, I imagine they probably have that done. Knowing the build quality of Teslas, I wouldn't be shocked.
One of the worst cars I've ever had to drive is your windshield wiper and your turning signal. There's like those two handles which go outside the steering wheel column.
Yeah.
I was in a car once which I had to drive, which had a third one of those things which came off the steering column, and that was the gears.
Oh, they have those in Ford trucks. Yeah, Ford,
I had
like
to
F-150s
double,
have those.
triple check every single time I tried to switch a gear, so I didn't accidentally, or even turn on the windshield wiper, so I didn't accidentally go in reverse suddenly.
All right, Trey. Well, you know how you were complaining about having an extra stick there?
Yeah.
I got some good news for you. This one has no sticks there.
How do you do turn signals? Is there another
I think there's a
car?
button on the steering wheel. But the one actually interesting thing about it is that the steering wheel only turns like 180 or so, or like 160 degrees in either direction, and that's just your full turning range. So you shouldn't get too lost when you're just doing things. But I still think the sticks always being in the same position is something that is useful. Always having the turn signals on... Oh my god, which way are the turn signals? That's the left side. That's the left side. Yeah. And then having like the windshield stuff on the right side, that is good for me. When I turn the steering wheel and I pause and think for a second about which side the volume is and how I'm adjusting the volume, I don't want to be doing that with like windshield wipers, with turn signals, stuff like that. I already hate it enough when I'm doing it with the volume. Now, the limited steering wheel turning, maybe that makes it work out much better. I'm still a little skeptical of it.
Well, Spencer, the car isn't for us. Right. The sales pitch was sometimes you get these late civilization vibes. The apocalypse comes along at any moment, and here at Tesla, we have the finest in apocalypse technology.
Yeah. Bulletproof.
It's funny because in an apocalyptic situation where industrial society breaks down, what you would want is a car that you could cannibalize parts from every other car on the road, like a bog standard sedan or like a mini SUV or whatever people drive these days, right? What you do not want is a car with exclusively proprietary parts that can only be sourced from other models of the same make, right? And, if you're in an apocalyptic situation, a Mad Max style thing, I assume you're going to be driving around, like trying to escape from Morton Joe and his war boys. If you crash into something, you probably want to survive the crash, right? Especially
honestly, if I'm in an apocalypse and I crash, just cut me out there. Take me out. I don't want to be limping in an apocalypse. So I got to say they got that one right.
Well, in an apocalypse, I wouldn't want to rely on an electric car. Just because electricity requires people to be, in industry.
Yeah, it requires constant generation, whereas gasoline is usually good for like a good year after it's refined.
So, I don't know how good this would be in apocalypse anyways, if it's electric.
Or my National Geographic presents Prepper's rating is thumbs down.
Well, here I got one thing that's a thumbs up for me in this vehicle, and that has when you're, I think, going at slow speeds and you're turning sharp, the rear wheels turn 10 degrees as well, which cuts down on the turning radius significantly, and I think that's a really good feature. I drive a much smaller vehicle than this, and even then I'm just like, I want a smart car's turning radius. I would love a smart car where I can just, like, I don't have to 3-point turn, I can just 180 that bitch. Yeah, I think
that's, like,
nice.
good, I guess, but I assume that also complicates the drivetrain further and adds another point of failure to the rear wheels.
It kind of does. I imagine, I figure we probably know the ability to turn wheels enough at this point. Now, their build quality, probably not. Again, but I feel like, with bigger trucks and all of that, we've probably got this one about down.
Okay.
Now, what's up with that Tesla, like, is it semi-truck, the big truck?
I haven't heard anything about the Tesla Semi since it was announced.
Yeah. Well, maybe 1 year.
Maybe
I still think my
indeed.
favorite transportation proposition from Elon Musk was that space flight for traveling thing where he was like, oh, you can get anywhere in the world in, like, 30 minutes. But then someone worked with it and was just like, the only way you could make it faster than a plane and a train is if you just, with your space shuttle, deafen entire cities. Because you wouldn't be able to get far enough in time. You'd have to do, like, a boat ride to get away from civilization.
Yeah, listen, we all know Elon Musk is a charlatan and a scammer. I think that's all. Anyone who isn't an Elon Musk fanboy, I think, shares that opinion.
Yeah.
But I think that's all. Are we all we're covering this episode? Are we splitting the fall economic statement into a separate bonus?
Yeah, I need to eat about now. It's been an hour 20 minutes. We've given them we've given them some content, and I might do some more reading for the fall economic statement too. I'd like to read the whole thing, my own. So.
Oh wow.
Okay, we'll cover it another day then, before the next episode.
Well, thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.